not, because you wanted to have that, and so this was pre the internet. So, they used to joke about a little black book, but you'd keep a book of phone numbers. And so, it wasn't a big deal to, even if a girl you hadn't talked to in a while, call up, hey, Lisa, what's going on, man? I haven't seen you in a while, blah, blah, blah. What are you doing Thursday? I don't know. What do you want to do? And take her out. So you've complained on this show about Netflix and chill, and I die laughing at that. That is so lame, so fucking lame. We always had, like, you prided yourself on having some phenomenal date in your deck of cards that you would roll out. And so, like mini golf was one of my go-to things. The more creative and different the date, so like even dinner and a movie is lame. So I used to love taking girls on dates that they remembered it was different. And so, again, this is pre the internet. So people still communicated, information still got shared, but it got shared word of mouth. And so, this is part of when I go back to Life's the Journey. Even if you had a so-so date, you dated any and everybody just to give it a try. Mm-hmm. And part of it was you got your name out there. So it's funny because sometimes you date a girl a couple times and it wasn't a big deal if it didn't work out. But it was good because any friends that she had that if you wanted to date, if you had shown her a good time, when you went to ask a friend out, they'd be like, oh yeah, James is fun. He's fun to go out with. I had a good time with him. And so
it was a lead into the friend group.
It was. You did. And that was, see, that's kind of illegal these days, but that was totally.
Yeah, you would get shamed if you went through the whole friend group.
Oh, you totally. Matter of fact, your mom.
Call out Tammy.
I dated her best friend.
Yes. I was going to get to that. We'll save that for
We'll save that. All right, I'll save
segment.
That. I'll save that.
But, no, and I agree. And, like, that's why, to me, although it's so normal for a Netflix and chill date, so I'm like, what the hell do you even say back?
So I'll say as a teaser to the mom, me dating her friend, Tammy approached me. This was well before we started dating, but it was after I had a date with Lisa. And she said, so, I heard you went out with Lisa. I'm like, yeah. She said, Lisa told me it was the best date she's ever had in her life. And I was just like beaming, like, that's the kind of
that's a win.
That's an advertisement I need out on the street. Tell your friends, wake your neighbors, tell them all. So, but that's how it worked back then. So sorry, you started to ask something. Say that again.
Basically, my whole point is so that, like, the Netflix and chill these days is just so common. Like, how do you, like, I guess for me, I just feel like, do I just not even go on a date? Like, or what the hell do you do? Like, so is it a boy problem or is it a girls for settling it problem?
I think it's different times these days, and so it calls for a different answer. So one thing, what stops you from flipping the script and you have a good date?
Oh, God. Well, yes, but I also feel like boys are sensitive to being, like, emasculated in the fact that if I plan a date, they're going to be like, oh.
But if a guy calls you and says, hey, you want to Netflix and chill, you can say, maybe, but tell you what, why don't we, there's this thing I've wanted to do. Would you go with me to, and if you say it in that way where it doesn't feel emasculating, you can pull it off in a way. I mean, come on. This is you showing your naivete as a young woman. A key woman skill that they all become Shaolin masters by 30 is making guys do things, and the guy doesn't even know that the girl got them to do what they wanted to do.
Well, so then am I expected to pay then because I asked them?
It depends on what it is, and so maybe it's a halvesies. That the pay thing it depends on the person. Like some people would, no matter what, would want to pay. Some people are cheap.
Part of me is like, it's in college. Like during college, I'm kind of fine with halvesies, because but also it's like a nice on a first date.
So you could say that halvesies up front, so whatever, like the mini golf thing. If the guy calls you and says, hey, you want to chill and watch a movie, and be like, what I'd really love to do is there's a band playing at this bar, and I haven't gone and sit and listen to jazz in a bar. Would you, and then you can just say, we'll go halvesies or whatever, or the mini golf or whatever the thing is there's, you've got some salesmanship to you. I know you're known for your chirping, but you also have some salesmanship to you. So you could sell it in a way that the guy doesn't even know that you're steering him there.
Yeah.
Plus, what's funny is in my repertoire of dates were things that didn't even cost money. And sometimes I would come up with these on the fly. Like one of the funnier things, sometimes on a date, I would be tooling down the road and I would see like a store that I thought was interesting. And I wouldn't like take the girl shopping as the date, but I would just whip in. I remember one time, one of the funnest date moments I had, I pulled into like the equivalent of a Home Depot, and we walked around the Home Depot and we picked which sink would you, if we built a house together, what sink would you?
Yeah.
And we just busted a gut laughing at arguing over tile like old people,
Right. It's like out of the box.
Right. And so I liked out of the box type of stuff like that. I was a big fan of out of the box, and so I think we had the same problem with malaise as what you're talking about. So like UWM, big commuter school, much smaller school in terms of the people that actually lived on the east side. And, I might be ruining a future question.
I was going to say, why don't I just ask you right now? So basically, we know you lived on the east side. That's where all the hipsters were. That's where all the cool people were. And we know you were known for this radius rule. Would you care to expand on that?
So looking back, this sounds kind of redneck, but you get used to you're a hipster, you live in the cool part of town, and all the cool things to do are down there. And so, yes, I had this rule that if I had to drive to date you, I don't care how hot you are, I ain't going to date you. And so sometimes I would meet a girl and I would be like, oh, this girl's great. I got to go out with this girl. And I'd find out she lived in Waukesha. And I'd be like, wah, wah. And so
she was just cut off, like it was done.
Oh, there's a particular girl that I have in mind, and she was a very attractive girl. And we had dated a few times, and I kept coaxing her into coming down to the east side. And all of a sudden, one day, she called me, and she's like, hey, what are you doing today? And she goes, it's time for you to come out by me. She goes, my parents are throwing a party today. It's time for you to come out. Come on out. My mom's a good cook. She was Hispanic, and she's like, come on out. We got some good food. You get to hang with my family. And it was still early on, and so I was like, ooh, 2 strikes in one day. It's too early to meet your family, and I ain't driving to Waukesha, so I broke up with her.
Jesus Christ! She thought she was going to bring you to the family party, and you're like, first of all, the only thing wrong with you is you live too far away, and I don't want to meet them.
She was a cool chick, too, man. Yeah.
That's tough.
It was too early for the parents thing. Too early.
So essentially, if you live more than 20 minutes away, it's cut off.
At the time, yes. And thankfully, your mom lived just a few blocks away.
So okay, screw soulmates. Look within your nearest 4 blocks.
Hey, I've been on Vine Street. You got plenty of opportunity in that 4-block space. Matter of fact, Vine Street is the most interactive. There's more dating going on Vine Street than any. It's a very incestual street.
Yes, Vine Street is well known. I couldn't live on any other street ever. Okay, good to know. I'm just gonna start knocking on doors when I go back to lacrosse.
Pretty much.
You gotta find your soulmate here.
Make your dad proud with that one.
Oh yeah, I will. I know I will. So I was gonna go into a little bit more of dating now versus back when you. So you have me, and you also have my brother, and I know Nick and I have different dating experiences, but you've heard from us, and you're a very hip guy, from the interwebs. So what are your thoughts on dating now versus then? Advice, any of the above?
I touched on it a bit, and it's a head scratcher to me. I mean, like I said, man, when I was young, we were proud of our dating skills. It was a big deal, And so,
right.
I had this friend, John Petty. His nickname was Worm. And he was our manager at the bar for a while. And I come into work one night, and there's a bunch of people hanging around Worm. And he's like, get over here. And he goes, give me your best dating ideas. And it's I looked at him sideways because you didn't do that. And he goes, I met the girl of my dreams. I've got to take her on, 6 of the best. I need everybody's best. And it's like normally you didn't do that. And so going back to your what's different today between then, we took pride in our workmanship. You know, it was and that ended up being fun. I think I touched on too. You know, the other thing, like, and so sorry, listening audience. I don't want to sound like I'm calling people out, but like one gal told a story about a guy that was she was all skeeved out because he was a bit of a stalker. So stalking was a thing when I was back in the day. As a matter of fact, my friend Craig and his wife Holly, he flat out stalked her. And part of my point is I think you were willing to go on bad dates. And I got to be honest, man, a lot of the times those bad dates turned into good dates as you got to know the person. It's hard to describe. And so like when she was describing this guy, and I get it, sometimes the person skeeves you out. And so she might be spot on. She might be totally right. I might be totally wrong. But there were so many times I saw back in the day where somebody was skeeved out by somebody, but over a while they eventually started dating. And, you know, all of a sudden, boom, it's like they fit. And so sometimes that skeeve out, you're reading it wrong. And so I think that's another thing is the journey, not the destination thing. Go out on dates. Have a bad date. Because that's the other thing is, how are you going to know who the perfect guy is unless you've had some bad dates? I had this mentor.
True.
I had this mentor once that said, you got to touch the guardrails every once in a while to know how wide the road is.
Right.
And so I think that's another thing. We were willing to have dates, and like, I don't know so much your age, but maybe Nick's age, everybody had to go on group dates. It's like, nah, man. Now, sometimes you would take a girl out and you would get some solo time, and you might, you know, make a point of, well, we're going to meet up at 11 because at this bar at 11, but you would make sure you picked her up at 7 and had some time for dinner and hanging out beforehand. And so I think there's a lot of things that this generation and maybe before you rely on a little bit of, you let social awkward penguin become too important.
Right.
You let the dating apps become too important.
Well, and I don't know about, to back up my generation, I feel like there's been this almost like no one wants to be too into each other. Like, it's almost like a sign of weakness, which is a weird thing. And I don't know if I'm phrasing that correctly, but that's how I've noticed it. Like, you don't know the person yet, and it's like a scared of like what. So let's say you liked this person, right? But they have a bad reputation, or someone tells you something bad. Well, you don't want to have any skin in the game, so it's easy to be like, no, I didn't like them. Like, date was horrible or whatever. Like, it's like you almost want to really get to know them, get to know their reputation before you commit to like publicly attaching your name to them, which is a weird thing.
I can understand it a bit, and I think the fact that you guys use dating apps add to it. Now, what's funny is I go back in the day. Let's say as a girl you were out and your girlfriend saw you out on a date with this weird guy. Back then you'd laugh it off. You'd be like, yeah, whatever, you know, Harvey, yeah. And
he's a creep, whatever.
You could joke and say he's as creepy as we thought he was. I'm glad I'm glad I know I'll never do this again. Or sometimes you'd be like, you know what? He's kind of an oddball, but he's kind of a fun oddball. You know, I ended up finding. So I don't know. You know, I get it. You know, I'm not calling your age group out as.
No, I would call them out. I personally think it's like stupid. Like, how are you going to meet who you want to marry with, like, I don't know, Mom told me this once and it's stuck in my head. Like, how do you get to know someone when you just, like, jump to, like, such an intimate level of, like, cuddling in your own bed with them?
So, well,
that's scary. Like,
that is scary. The other thing I would tell you is I think a lot of times the person that you have in your head as Mr. Right is not at all who you're going to get married to. Like, yeah. I'll just say straight up, you know, Tammy's an amazing woman, but if you'd asked me 2 years before dating Tammy to describe Mrs. Right, I wouldn't have described Tammy.
Crazy.
I knew she was an awesome chick back then, but that wasn't my template.
It's what was good for you, but it's not what you thought in your head.
And so I would mess with her when I would see her out, and then, something built. And so it's the same thing when